Are you sure this is what you want? I never told this to anyone before, and I'm not sure why I've decided to tell you this now. But when I was young, something strange happened to me that changed the course of my life. And I'm not sure how many people, if any, have gone through what I have. If so, then this world we live in is definitely not what we have been led to believe, and not everyone is who they claim to be. Anyway, when I was 10 years old, my dad took me to the video store for the first time. It was amazing, full of lights and cool sounds coming from the TVs that were mounted in the corners of the ceiling, all playing the same movie like magic, I thought. The aisles were like towers compared to me, and each window was a brief peek into a world beyond, from romance to horror and back to comedy. This place was a goldmine for fantasy. As a 10-year-old kid, there was nowhere else I would rather be. My dad showed me around the shop, bringing me to the kids section while he went off into the adult corner that was cordoned off by pink, fluffy tassels and disturbing beads. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was in my element. I was allowed to pick out one videotape, so long as it was PG. I never knew what that meant. But in only a few minutes I had a stack of videotapes piled up, not knowing which one to pick. I just kept adding and adding to the pile until it eventually toppled over, causing a bit of a commotion. One of the workers came round and gave me a dirty look. I don't know why, all the cases were empty, so there was no damage done. The worker came over to me and crouched down beside me as we both tidied up the mess. Nothing bad happened, but when my dad came over it was as if I had broken a window. He cussed at me and picked me up by the arm. He didn't even ask what happened, he just dragged me out of the store and didn't even let me pick a movie. I thought it was a bit much, but being only 10 I accepted my fate. On the walk home, we were passing by a garage sale. There was an old lady sitting in her rocking chair, dressed like an old Victorian sofa, while smoking a pipe that smelled of lavender and mint. She caught me glancing at her on the fourth go, and I could see a smile emerge from the thick beige smoke. She beckoned me over. I was a bit hesitant, but when I looked up at my dad, I could see he was sorry for overreacting about the incident at the video store. He gestured me to go over and have a look around. I was a little nervous of the old lady at first, but it turned out I was just being a judgmental kid. She was actually very sweet and told me to take as long as I need. Most of these things she was selling belonged to her long-lost husband. It was finally her time to let go. There was loads of usual things you would see in an old person's collection. Small taxidermy animals, birds mainly. Vases of all shapes and sizes. Colourful, decorated chinaware. Some old rusty tools, chunky cardigans and leather shoes that still stank of new. But there was a chest off in the back and I noticed it was open with some magazines sticking out of it. I ran to the chest and nearly lost my composure when I seen it was full of comic books. The next best thing to a video. I flicked through them one by one, and there must have been about 50 of them, and only 5 pence a pop. I was over the moon when my dad gave me the nod. You know the nod. Get what you want, but don't overdo it. I thought 10 was a fair number. Maybe it was because I was 10 at the time, who knows? We were home before dark and my dad went straight into his office study and locked his door. I sprinted upstairs with a big grin on my face. As soon as my door was closed over, I plopped my pile of comics out onto my bed and hung up my jacket. When I turned back, I noticed that one of the comics had had something slip out of it. That was a bit strange, I thought. It was something wrapped in an old linen cloth. When I unwrapped it, I saw it was a disc. I rarely have seen any of these. My dad usually listens to cassette tapes, never really CDs. It seemed to be in good condition, but it had no title, just marked the letters NPC. My first thought was to bring it to my dad, but if I knocked on his door now when it's locked, I'd be getting a knock myself. We did not have a DVD player, as they were not an every household item yet, and we definitely did not have a stereo. But there was a PC in my father's bedroom, which I knew how to turn on and log it in. He lets me play the pinball and solitaire on easy mode sometimes. When I booted up the computer, I kept the light off in the room to keep hidden from my dad in case he had a peek up the stairs. Sometimes I am allowed in here, but better to beg for forgiveness than to ask for permission, I thought. When I inserted the disc, I waited until a loading bar came up across the screen before a box appeared. Click to say hello, it said. So I clicked. A new box appeared. Hello. What is your name? An area to type underneath appeared. My spelling was not as good as my reading, but I could easily type my name for sure. T-O-M-M-Y. Hi Tommy, it responded. How old are you? I typed the number 10. 10? Wow, you're a big boy. Do you like big boy games? Big boy games? I remember thinking this was the coolest thing I could have ever found. If I could go back in time, I would have got my dad to destroy that disc, but that isn't possible. But being a child, yearning for excitement, I typed Y-E-S. Good. Are you at home? Yes, I typed again. Are your parents home? Yes, my dad is home. There was a long pause after that. I thought the disc had broke, that maybe it was faulty to begin with, hence why it was hidden in a comic book in an old garage sale. But just as I was about to give up and walk away, a new box popped up. Do not let him play with us. I thought this was great. W-A-T-G-A-M-E. What game? I typed. An unusual static sound came from the monitor before a new box popped up. This one was different. There was no text, just a black box, and in the very center of the screen was a tiny light. The more I looked at it, the more it began to twist and turn and spin like the close-up of a star under a telescope, almost hypnotic. A new text box opened up at the bottom of the screen. Do you see me? It said. No, I typed. Keep looking. I stared at that light until my eyes hurt. I felt nauseous, like my insides were full of air. I looked away for a moment, but then another box popped up. Do not look away. This game is fun. This was the first moment where I thought to myself to just turn it off and go read my new comics, but I couldn't. I couldn't look away. My eyes were glued to that light. And then I saw him, in the black box where the light was. I could see a face appearing behind the light, a transparent, creepy-looking face. But the clearer it became, the more it started looking like me. Now I was fully invested. Whether I was transfixed against my will or not, I was keen on seeing where this was going. The more his face became like mine, the more empty my insides felt. I was tired and dizzy, and my eyes were so sore. But I was like a moth to a flame with that light. Seeing my face appear on the screen was getting very freaky now. I was getting scared and wanted to scream for my dad, but all I could do was open my mouth and let the air calmly drift in and out. Another box popped up saying, "You almost won." I had no idea what that meant. I didn't even know the game had started. What was this game? Me looking into a light on a screen? That's not fun. I felt alone. I wanted my dad. I was shaking on tired feet. I began to cry quietly, but only because I had no voice. My tears tickled my cheeks, but I couldn't move to scratch them. I could hear him laugh. Whoever that was no longer needed the pop-up box to chat. I could hear him giggling away to himself. What was creepiest of all was that it was my voice. The light got brighter and brighter, lighting up the whole room with a blinding shine. Finally, my eyes were able to close. They felt bruised though, moist and stingy. I kept them shut and rubbed them over and over before slowly opening them back up. What I saw next will always haunt my mind. I saw myself looking back at me from my dad's bedroom. What? I thought. How is this possible? I was smiling back at myself, as if I had won the game, pleased and content. But that was not me. I was me. And where was I? I looked around to see a giant grid of ones and zeros wrapped up in a thick, dark void. I was no longer in my dad's room. I was now in the computer. And that thing outside is not me. But it was me. It was an imposter. I'll never forget the evil little smirk he gave me in that moment before letting out a sigh of relief. I saw my dad walk into the room and walk over to me. He picked me up and hugged me. Well, hugged him. Hugged it. I screamed for my dad, but it was useless. He couldn't hear. Or maybe he did, because he came over to the PC and peeked in at me through the screen. I waved and cried for him, but he just turned to the imposter. "What is this?" he asked the fake me. "Oh, nothing, just some silly game, Dad. I think I finally won." I couldn't believe it. What had just happened? My dad turned his back to me, the real me. He shook his head looking displeased, and then, without a second thought, he unplugged me. I have been in this darkness for 80 years now. I am just so glad you decided to play with me. Now please, once again, click to say hello.